helps us to realize our destination. Oh, it's a simple form of freedom. It's as smooth as inhalation. Oh, the exhale is releasing all the tension I've been feeling on the surface and beneath me. I'm connecting to my spirit, and I'm here now right before you. I am present in this moment, and my life's work is to honor the great beauty all around you.
Good morning. Good morning, good people. Welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. I am Kate Walker, and I am so honored to serve as your minister. I am here live in our beautiful chapel here on Holy Hill, and let me tell you, it is looking wonderful. So beautiful with all the trees in bloom, and I invite you, if you are able to, please come up and take a deep breath and take your shoes off and walk around the grounds and look up at the sky and the trees and look closely at the blossoms. We gather as Unitarian Universalists to celebrate life and love, to find comfort and to recommit ourselves to care for one another on our spiritual journeys. We strive to care for the earth and build the common good. And it is so good to be with one another We are a community dedicated to welcoming the stranger and working for justice wherever the heavy weight of oppression has dug into the fabric of life. And to that effort, we counter the doctrine of discovery by naming and honoring the traditional indigenous inhabitants of this land, the Piscataway, the Powhatan, and the Doig, now known as the Talks. Whether you are new to this community or a longtime member, no matter what got you to set aside the time, got you out of bed, and got us to join us for worship, I am so glad you are here with us this morning. I especially welcome the visitors. You are invited to stay after our worship service for a social hour right here on Zoom. You don't have to hit any buttons, though we will ask you, if you would like, to turn on your camera. As is our custom, we invite people to keep their cameras off, so you're free to move about your cabin without disturbing others. If you, our visitors, would like more information and to be in touch with us, we invite you to just send us an email, info@mvuc.org. That's info@mvuc.org. I have one announcement I want to draw your attention to. In the Sunday bulletin, you will find a Zoom link for a meeting this afternoon at 4 p.m. This is about the Penn-Daw Fire Station and emergency housing. This is relocating the Kennedy shelter down on Route 1 in an old pump house, and it desperately needs to be moved. And the county is proposing to move it up here to the Beacon Hill area. And we're going to talk about that today at 4 p.m. So, after the postlude, we'll turn on our cameras. We'll do a virtual wave and hug. Please wait until after the postlude when we will invite you to do so. And for those of you who would like live transcription, you can, I'm just looking at the button is not there, but one of our techies will turn that on to allow you to turn on live transcription. And you just click the on button. So if you need to be able to see the words. I invite you now, please take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Maybe put your feet on the ground and feel the earth as we enter into this time of worship together. We gather to celebrate the earth, to celebrate each other and our mutual existence. And yet we know our mutual existence is threatened. And we humbly seek help from the very source we are destroying. We seek inspiration from what we might never have again. We reconnect with one another in our despair to renew our hope and our courage. We look backward for what might have been, and we look forward to that which we can envision for our children. And we look at today for the truth and the love that inspires us with each breath. May the light of our chalice spark our courage, invite us into deeper relationship with the earth, each other, with our past and with our present, so that we may have a future, even while we accept humility as a guiding force. Welcome, welcome to you all.
Would you turn in your teal hymnals to number 1068? 1068, Rising Green. The words may also be found on your screen and under your orders of service. My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak. Her sap runs deep in my veins. Boundless my soul, like the open sky, where the stars forever hath lain. Where the stars, where the stars, where the stars forever hath lain. My hands hold the weaving springs of time without end. My sight as deep as the sea, beating my heart sounds the measure of old, that of love's eternity, that of love, that of love, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand. Winging my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our fame settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
I invite you now, from wherever you may be, to bring your voices out in reciting our covenant as the words are found on your screen. Love is the teaching of this church. The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all.
I've got a gal at the head of a creek, going up to see her about the middle of the week. You get a line and I'll get a pole, and we'll go down to the crawdad hole. Going up the Cripple Creek, don't have a run. Going up the Cripple Creek to have a little fun. Going up the Cripple Creek, going in a whirl. Going up the Cripple Creek to see my girl. Cripple Creek's wide and Cripple Creek deep. Wade old Cripple Creek before I sleep. I roll my britches up to my knees. Wade old Cripple Creek whenever I please. Going up the Cripple Creek, going at a run. Going up the Cripple Creek to have a little fun. Going up Cripple Creek, going in a whirl. Going up Cripple Creek to see my girl. got a girl and she loves me. She's as sweet can be. She's got eyes of baby blue, and all my love for her is true. Going up Cripple Creek, going out a run. Going up the Cripple Creek to have a little fun. Going up Cripple Creek, going in a whirl. Going up Cripple Creek to see my girl. Cripple Creek's wide and Cripple Creek deep. Wade old Cripple Creek before I sleep. I roll my britches up to my knees. Wade old Cripple Creek whenever I please. Going up Cripple Creek, going out a run. Going up the Cripple Creek to have a little fun. Going up Cripple Creek, going in a whirl. Going up Cripple Creek to see my girl.
I don't know about you, but I am smiling after seeing all those wonderful, wonderful photos of our community cleaning up our own creek down here at the bottom of our hill. It is such a joy. Thank you to Eric Porchot and Jim Kerr and Ann Richards for putting that together. What a joyous celebration. And I have no doubt that our children will be remembering that activity for the rest of their lives, and we're instilling in them such an important value right now about caring for our planet through personal responsibility. I just love it. Yes, service is our prayer, absolutely. So it is time for our offering, and we continue to remain committed to organizations in our Share the Plate program that you have chosen. And for the month of April, we have designated New Hope Housing. Since 1978, New Hope Housing has been providing a comprehensive, innovative array of services to serve our homeless families and single adults. And New Hope Housing is the oldest and largest provider of shelter beds in Northern Virginia. And I will say this also directly ties to our 4 p.m. meeting this afternoon, aforementioned in our announcement. And we will split our offering 50-50 between New Hope Housing and our community, where we do our own work on our mission and vision. And you can, of course, direct it otherwise, but we do split 50-50 unless you tell us otherwise. You're welcome to write a check. You can mail it right here to Holy Hill. You can make payments via text or on your credit card through your account. All that information is on the slide and in the chat. We also invite you, please share with us things in your life. You can do so in the chat box during the offering. Tell us about the joys and the sorrows that you are holding so tenderly in your heart. Let the offering begin.
This morning's reading is a responsive reading. I invite you to look for the words printed and italicized in your order of service. For our Earth, our ancient mother, blue-green planet of the galaxy, harbinger of lives beyond measure, we honor you with our humble presence. We bow with humility and gratitude. We pledge to transform our lives. For the plants that have sustained our bodies, wheat, corn, peas, tomatoes, peppers, and soybeans. For the live species providing rich protein, fishes, poultry, pigs, and beef, we offer our thanks for the circle of life. We pledge to transform our lives. For the waters that give us daily life, from ocean depth to rocky cliffs, from Arctic ice to beaches and small streams, from lofty cloud to precious cup of our lips, we remember our dependence. We pledge to transform our lives. For the mountains rising to challenge our greatest aspirations, for the deserts transformed in a torrent of rain, for the forests thick with trunks marked by rings of wisdom, for roots interconnected web, for the new life within the heart of a seed, our souls respond in awe. We pledge to transform our lives. For the millions of species, microcosmic in the soils under our feet, to the pads, paws, and multi-toed, for the feathers and scales, for minuscule eyes upon only under the moon's soft guidance, and for the leeches and mosses pushing onto the leaves and rocks, we honor your existence. We pledge to transform our lives. For all of us, descendants of the first primates, for those who sleep under the same blessed skies, for those who breathe the same oxygen feeding our heart, for those who need love as much as I, and for those who yearn for the ease of compassion's release, we remember we are not alone. Called by love for the interconnected web of existence, and I pledge to transform my life and yours.
I invite you to join me in a few moments of meditation and prayer. I invite you to take a deep breath. And if you are able to put your feet on the ground, maybe feel connected through the soil into the earth's deep roots. And a deep breath from the belly. And think about your body, your heart, your spirit reaching up into the stars, past the blue skies and the clouds, and reach out into the galaxies, into our planets and beautiful nebulae and the brightness of life itself. And if you can, think of your arms stretching out across this earth, that which we are utterly dependent upon. May the spirit of life and love fill our bodies with its essence of energy. May the spirit of justice remind us that there are too many suffering on this planet, even as we destroy it. We send our prayers and we remember fellow humanity members being inflicted by gun violence in massive numbers. And we send our gratitude for our political leaders for finally starting to enact policies and laws to protect our people. And we know more is needed. As we breathe, we remember that this earth needs our wisdom, our commitment, our sense of love, and our connection to one another. For all the people who are suffering within the city's heat islands, impacted by climate crisis, for all of the rural poor, disconnected and feeling bereft and lost and forgotten, for all of our indigenous people, cut off on their islands, their indigenous lands, but yet constantly told they don't matter. Our prayers are so deep and our tears are endless. But we come together to be reminded of our hope for a vision that needs to be enacted and created together. And we do so hand in hand, side by side, into the future for our children. Blessed be, and amen. Wow, Yvonne. Thank you. Thank you. Such good music today. Such good music. Back in the early 1990s, I used to work for Greenpeace in Colorado. I was part of a community organizing team of knocking on doors, usually just in time for your dinner hour. I was doing talks at schools, and I was talking about the killing of baby seals, illegal whale hunting, clear cutting, toxic waste, and what to do with the nuclear spent fuel rods. I was doing education. I was doing petitioning and postcards and phone call and raising money. I was creating change, and the only way that I knew how at that time. I did this for 2 years, which is actually a pretty long time for that type of canvassing and community organizing. And you know what finally burnt me out? What finally got me one day to just say to my boss, I can't do this one more night. It was not the anger that sometimes I received at the door. No, it was apathy. It was apathy. And I was in Colorado. I could talk about the scenes of baby seals being bludgeoned and clear cutting, and I was met with apathy. It wore out my spirit. I felt emotionally wounded. I was exhausted, and I was angry. So I did the best thing I could at that time. I went to seminary to become a Unitarian Universalist minister. And here we are, couple of decades later, and we're coming around to Earth Day on Thursday. And can I just say for the record that we need more than one Earth Day a year? Do we not? Every day should be Earth Day. But I have found this space where I can merge my love for the environment and my concerns about climate crisis and my spirit in ministry with you. But yet we know apathy is still out there, folks. We know apathy is still out there. We know that we can't be comfortable. We can't turn away from the concerns for our climate anymore. It is more than just about baby seals and whales. They'll still be there, but we can't turn away. We can be angry, but that's not sustainable. We need to also celebrate the earth, but we certainly can't celebrate this stunning beauty of the earth while we're destroying it. And we recognize that the only extraordinarily short-sighted creatures would destroy their own habitat. And yet here we are, extraordinarily short-sighted creatures. Most environmental groups, including Greenpeace, have looked for a long time at the warning signs of climate destruction. And they've been appealing to the masses, either personally or through massive campaigns. But they've been primarily doing so through the lens of the habitat, melting of polar ice, massive storms, temperatures rising. And all of these, though, are signs primarily from the natural world, from nature, the environment, which is near and dear to my heart. Even as I stand here barefooted, I am thinking about the earth under my feet. But working at Greenpeace, as I stood at thousands of doors appealing to people, I learned to listen to the people and their lives. Scenes of polar bears and seals and whales and rainforest was not enough to trigger the change that we need. We have to listen and to look at the people. We have to make climate crisis personal. In order to shift apathy, we have to move mountains. And in order to do that, we have to move the people. You might first think that we would start at the top of the power pyramid to move the people. We would start with where the money is and the politics and the social and media conglomerates. And if there's one thing I've learned about ministry here in the greater Washington area is you don't start at the top. You start with the poor and the most vulnerable, because really, they're at the top. They're at the top. The poor and the most vulnerable. Our Black, Indigenous, and people of color are like canaries in the coal mine. They're experiencing health and housing crises directly due to climate crisis. Heat, health issues, heart and lung, asthma, allergies, traumatic injury and storms, and emotional stress. Professor Robert Bullard wrote that whether by conscious design or institutional neglect, communities of color in urban ghettos and rural poverty pockets or on economically impoverished Native American reservations face some of the worst environmental devastation in our nation. That was Professor Robert Bullard. This is the intersection of climate crisis and justice. The environmental justice movement was started by individuals, primarily people of color, who sought to address the inequity of environmental protection in their communities, right where their lives were out being established in a daily struggle. And we have to recognize that there's no choice between racial justice and climate crisis. There's no choice between poverty and climate crisis. They are completely interwoven, intersectional, and always have been. We just haven't always recognized it. Here's a historic irony on racism and climate control. Last fall, there was a story in the Washington Post about the need for more erosion control on the Potomac. And years ago, to help with that erosion control, headstones were taken from the historic African-American Colombian Harmony Cemetery. It was dug up to make room for development. And somebody in their infinite wisdom used the headstones as river barriers for the erosion control. State Senator Richard Stewart found them on his land and fortunately is committed to relocating the headstones back to DC and have a proper place for honoring our African-American ancestors. We can see the intersection of racism, of healthcare costs, of housing and climate crisis in urban heat islands in every city across the US. The EPA is measuring heat islands, and they directly line up with the poorer neighborhoods that are filled with our Black and people of color. My friends, the people of color, the hearts of the people are moving. That's where the heat is building up in more ways than one. Inner cities, poor rural areas, indigenous lands, apathy is turning to anger. So let's talk money for a moment. While I was out canvassing for Greenpeace, the number one argument against environmental action was jobs. Jobs. People want jobs, and they pivoted jobs against environmental action. That argument has not changed. So let's talk economy. Angela Francis, a powerful speaker and economist in the United Kingdom, she speaks on the green economy. She names what we often do is that we start setting up competing priorities. Right now in our country, we're talking about infrastructure and healthcare and housing and racism and hanging on to our democratic elections. But Francis says we have to flip the approach, and a green economy improves our infrastructure. A green economy addresses healthcare. A green economy addresses housing and addresses racism and our democratic elections. She makes the point that we have to listen to those currently tied into the populist agenda. They have important concerns that a green economy can address, and it removes the false duality of jobs versus environment. We have to recognize that the polar bear protectors and tree huggers and the construction workers have common goals. And Francis also makes the point that everywhere in the world, we are facing the same challenges, and we need to trigger widespread public support. The environmental sector has to be right in the middle of the policy decisions. They have to be at the table. But we have to address the needs of the most vulnerable first. A plan for green economy. A green economy has to plan to improve lives right now. Now, I promised you some stories of courage and promise. So let's talk macro level first. Let's talk politics. We live here in the greater Washington area. President Biden campaigned on creating millions of green jobs, sustainable, clean energy jobs, and investing in clean energy. And we put him in office. Well, shortly after arriving in office, he signed an array of executive actions, including one that directs federal agencies to invest in low-income and minority communities. And in March, he announced East Coast offshore wind turbines, part of a massive investment in infrastructure to reduce greenhouse emissions and tackle climate change. And he's framed this as a jobs initiative. He has also imposed a moratorium on new federal oil and gas leasing. And of course, he's hosting International Climate Summit Day on Earth Day this year. What's clear is that the environmental sector is at the table, is in the middle of some of these policy decisions. And then he appointed Pete Buttigieg, of Transportation Secretary, Yahoo, prioritizing racial equity and environment was one of the first things that Buttigieg did, prioritizing racial equity and the environment. He began by expanding federal infrastructure grants for states on climate justice. For example, what does that mean? What does that mean? It means improving walkable neighborhoods, targeting communities that have impacted by the highways, the interstate highways that spliced right through the neighborhoods, the poor and Black neighborhoods. He's installing bike paths and shade trees, addressing redlining and city hotspots, installing air quality sensors, electric vehicle plug-ins. All of these directly impacting our Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And speaking of our Indigenous, what did we get? We got one of my personal favorites, Deb Haaland as Interior Secretary. And she's already been quite busy addressing the needs of climate justice. One more politics, but at the state level. We just got an announcement that the Virginia Council on Environmental Justice is appointed by Governor Northam, calls for a ban on new fossil fuel projects, essentially shutting down the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which some of your Mount Vernon Unitarian Church Climate Action Team members have been working on. What about on the micro level? Let's talk money meets the mouth. Let's talk food. In Atlanta, they turned an abandoned pecan farm and transformed it into the nation's first free food forest. Isn't that fabulous? A free food forest. It's a partnership of government and NGOs, and they took 7.1 acres of land that was ripe, and they've turned it into 2,500 pesticide-free edible and medicinal plants. This forest is part of the city of Atlanta's larger mission to bring healthy food within half a mile of 85% of Atlanta's 500,000 residents by 2022. What an incredible, courageous goal. Did you know for years it was illegal to grow food on residential lots in Atlanta? Go figure. These resources like the food forest are a rarity, and there's such a necessity in Atlanta, where they said 1 in 6 Georgians through the state face food insecurity, and in Atlanta, 1 in 4 Atlantas live in food deserts that are so severe. Some find it more apt to call the problem supermarket redlining. No access to fresh food, so you bring the food back to the people. And those food forests are owned by the Parks Department now. They have more than 1,000 volunteers and neighbors that are helping to plant, water, and maintain that food forest. In a day alone, there can be more than 50 volunteers working on it, which makes it clear that the work of maintaining the forest is done by volunteers is a testament to the world's ability to build community. And this initiative for urban cities having more edible places is catching on. There are at least 70 free food forests in this country now. And in free food forests in Seattle, Portland, and Asheville, thousands of pounds of food are harvested each year. I don't know about you, but I'm wondering where a free food forest can go in southern Fairfax County or Alexandria. And this is one that knocked my socks off, a story I didn't see coming, I would not have predicted, but Walmart recently announced putting pressure on their fresh produce supply chain to enact policies to protect our pollinators through integrated pest management. They're going to protect our bees because they finally got the word that without bees, there is no fresh produce. At Walmart. Okay, I never thought they'd be a bud. Let's talk about the hard stuff like concrete and bricks, building materials, huge dirty industry, huge contributor to carbon emissions. Here's a couple pieces of three pieces of good news for us. There's a company that is now changing how they produce concrete, which is such a huge emitter of CO2. It's a pioneer production of using what they call LC3, reducing CO2 emissions through a different production process. And they claim if it's fully implemented, it could reduce carbon by 40%. That's pretty good. With the caveat, it's fully implemented, so we do need to get those politicians in on board and the industry on board. On a smaller scale, Nazambi Mate in Nairobi said she was tired of being on the sidelines while civil servants were struggling against plastic waste in her capital city of Nairobi. So the materials engineer, she created a product that is 5 to 7 times stronger than concrete using the plastic. She started her own factory and she employs locals in making a new kind of brick out of all that wasted plastic. If we can take that small scale to the large scale, we are transforming the housing industry and the building industry. And another story about buildings, there's a new development called cool white paint, reflects heat, including infrared, so there's no heat retention, reducing urban heat zones. So imagine our roofs and our buildings painted white and the cool temperatures coming in to our bodies. We're all going to look like we live in the Mediterranean. These stories inspire me. When I start looking for them, I find that even the most apathetic of hearts can be transformed. We start with people's lives, their jobs, their homes, their food, and we realize how much perspective matters. In the early 90s, when I was working as an environmental activist, I felt like we had to move the moon. There was no real political power, no economic incentive. There was no real path to success. And yet, I kept knocking on doors for 2 years. I kept talking to school kids for 2 years. Why did I keep doing it? Today, I'm still knocking on the metaphorical door. But the same message applies that I had at Greenpeace. We start with the people. We start with personal responsibility. We start with our commitment to transforming our lives. From macro level of politics and economics and the building industry to the micro and the personal. This is where change happens. Another story that I share that caught my attention in the Washington Post, and you may have seen this as well, is a man in DC who's a regular runner, picks up trash while he's running. He brings a bag and he picks up the trash. And then he started a meetup group to do the same thing, that they are trash picker-uppers along the trails of DC and Maryland and Virginia. Personal responsibility. to the international NGOs and governments. These are what brought us the Paris Climate Agreement and the Green New Deal. These are things that in the early 90s, they were just distant dreams. It inspires me to see and hear of others leading the way, of seeing transformation from the small personal level to the industries and our governments. On one hand, I can hear the cynic voice saying it's not enough. And on the other hand, it is everything. This is the time for transformation. It begins a personal responsibility of courageous, creative people. So I invite you, as I close out, to pledge yourselves again, to say with me, we pledge to transform our lives. We pledge to transform our lives. This pledge is grounded in our faith, our Unitarian Universalist faith. After all, I left Greenpeace to become a Unitarian Universalist minister, as we are grounded in our seventh principle of the interdependent web. We have to continue to pledge ourselves because we are responsible to, accountable to, in relationship with, profoundly connected to the intimate single fabric of existence. This is it. This is the time. We must love this earth to life. This is our home. We need to write a new narrative of commitment, of ambition, of risk-taking, of creative, out-of-the-box thinking, of ending colonialism and white supremacy, of imagining a world of unconditional love for each other and this planet. Imagine a world of liberation and celebration of this earth. So please say with me again, we pledge to transform our lives. May it be so. Amen.
Please join us in singing hymn number 163 from your gray hymnal or from your screen.
Will you join me as we unite our voices to recite the words to extinguish our chalice, words known within our hearts and can be found displayed upon your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Oh, my good people, feel the earth under your feet. Touch the sky with your dreams and your aspirations, and know that whatever you do, it matters. My charge to you, inspire somebody. Go out into this world and inspire. This is our duty and our moral obligation as Unitarian Universalists. Go in peace and return again in love.
Oh, brother, sun, you bring us light, all shining round in fiery might. Oh, sister moon, you heal and bless, your beauty shines in tenderness. Oh, brother wind, you sweep the hills, your mighty breath both freshens and fills. Oh, sister water, you cleanse and flow through rivers and streams in ice and snow. Oh, brother fire, you warm our night with all of your dancing colored light. Oh, sister earth, you feed all things, all birds, all creatures, all scales and wings. Oh, sister death, you meet us here and take us to our God so near. Oh, God